Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Near Memo with David, Mike, and Greg. And this is episode 147, in which we'll be talking about some quirky long-tail behaviors that Mike has been long fascinated by, and our user research has sort of confirmed for him. And I will be talking about the sort of new Google Gemini toggle that's appeared on the Google app on my iPhone, and why I think that's interesting in some ways and not in others. And David's going to be talking about David and Goliath in terms of content and ranking with this most recent piece where Reddit is outranking a review site for an original article, which is not an uncommon thing. So, Mike, why don't you tell us about those long tail behaviors?
Sure. So there's two behaviors on Google that I've often wondered about. The first behavior is whether the map when you do a local search, the map that's presented in a window is scrollable. And when you move your mouse over it, zooms in and zooms out, scrolls up and down, zooms in and zooms out. I've often wondered whether people actually use that behavior, because I never have. And the other behavior that I was curious about was how often do people do a brand query as part of a discovery search? In other words, where they find a couple results and then go back and do a brand query to either confirm or double check or to understand things. And we're doing this consumer behavior research to see the impact of the modifications that Google made to the local SERPs in Europe to comply with the Digital Marketing Act. And this research will be released next week. But as part of that, we get to see how people explore the local search results. So on the first issue of whether they use the scrollable part of Google Maps, and we knew that they did in proximity-based queries like storage, where proximity is the most critical thing. But we're doing some investigation of dinner restaurants, which seem much less proximity-based once Google sort of approximates the city you're in. And about 10% of the users actually did care a great deal about where the dinner restaurant was located. And they did use the map feature to scroll in, to zoom in. And sometimes, not a lot, but about 10% of the time they used the map feature. And sometimes they actually picked off the map what their likely choice would be. This is behavior that we'd never seen it in other investigations we've done. We didn't see it in lawyers, where people don't really care about proximity. Proximity is sort of secondary in the physician field. But in restaurants, it came up a fair bit of the time. I mean, the takeaway from this for me is that if you're in a business that has some proximity-based import to people nearby, then you need to be aware that ranking is off the table. As long as you're on the map, is all that matters, right? And it matters in some percentage, 10% of the cases, if that's the situation, at least with restaurants. So I thought it was fascinating. I mean, the interface that Google implements here is very annoying. Like, I'll scroll down the page wanting to get beyond the map, and all of a sudden I'm zooming in and out of the map. It's kind of like, as I said in my article, quicksand. You can't get out of it. You have to move your mouse to the right really quickly, scroll down the rest of the page. It's terrible UI. But some people actually want it and use it, and I more than I would have thought. The other behavior that I've often wondered about is brand queries as part of a discovery search. There's this general belief that a brand query is a brand query. They already know about you. They're going to look up something about you. But I've often thought that it was part and parcel of a discovery, that if people were digging a little deeper, they would do a discovery query and then append a brand query to that to either confirm or deny or make some other assessment about it. And again, we saw that about 10 in these discovery searches for dinner in Ireland. And by the way, I'd love to take you guys out to dinner in Ireland. Look like there's some really good restaurants.
We do need a company boondoggle to confirm the validity of these search results. Yeah,
we do. I think Marco Polo, and there was another one, Wild or something, came up on a regular basis. Anyway,
that's right.
Where was I? when I started talking about food.
You were talking.
You were talking about the brand.
Yeah, you were talking
brand
about
the brand
research,
searches, right?
Oh, the
So
brand.
in roughly,
Yes.
follow-up search.
Right.
Yes.
So what I saw as again, 10% of the time, people would even go into TripAdvisor. They'd scroll through a list. They didn't pick from the top 3. They would scroll very deep. They'd make some decision based on a combination of attributes. But then to sort of confirm their decision, they'd come back out, go to Google, and do a brand search on that. Now, what's 2 things are interesting about that is that it's a proxy for reviews because of the way Google presents reviews from around the web. And in Europe now, if somebody brings up a brand panel for a business as part of this, and they click on the reviews on Google, it does a brand plus review query and puts summaries of all the reviews over on the left. So it's a really quite a detailed view of the reviews, much more detailed than we get in the United States. And people did that to avoid having to read reviews, I guess, and also to confirm their decision. It was sort of a confirmatory behavior. So several things interesting in there, but not the least of which is the different way that Google displays these reviews.
And this is query. The behavior you described is actually a flavor of a zero-click search. I saw many instances of the exact behavior you're talking about, where dinner in Dublin or whatever, and then they looked up a specific restaurant following that. Neither of those searches resulted in a click-through to any site as a median journey, right? It didn't go through to the restaurant site, didn't go through to TripAdvisor or Yelp or anybody else who was ranking in the sort of set of organic review sites that Google was showing. So it's still very much a zero-click search, even though consumers do appear to be relying significantly on third-party review corpuses like TripAdvisor and others to sort of confirm this initial choice. So
it does point out why a business in this context needs to have reviews from around the web beyond just Google reviews, because no matter whether in the United States or Europe, these reviews are very prominent, and the consumer uses them to confirm their decision. They just want to know that they didn't make a mistake.
Well,
so it's really important that businesses have reviews from multiple places.
I want to challenge that, though, for a second, Mike. Are people really into Facebook? I mean, TripAdvisor certainly in hospitality is very important, and there's selected other sites that have importance. But, are people really paying attention to non-Google reviews? If they didn't start on TripAdvisor, if they didn't start on a third-party site and come back to confirm that the Google reviews were consistent, are they really paying attention to the reviews from around the web? Did either of you see that?
It depends on the actual query you're doing. Like in hotels in the United States and now in restaurants in Europe, Google integrates reviews from around the web as an integral part of the review corpus, and the scores are sort of shown there. So the answer depends.
In the brand Google business profile, or whatever you want to call that, right?
Yes,
there are these discrete around the web reviews, and at least I saw a bunch of people like sort of pausing as they were in that part of the knowledge panel. So
I think that almost operates on an unconscious level, because I think people are primarily, at least when they're on Google, primarily looking at the review count, the rating and the review count, and that other stuff is sort of there in the background to confirm, directionally this is the same. Yes, the good reviews, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how much people are paying close attention to those particular reviews from around the web. Maybe, but I mean, there are some practical. I mean, as you're talking about getting reviews from around the web and having reviews on other sites, that involves a certain amount of effort, obviously.
But I mean, it's part and parcel of the review solicitation.
If there is a glaring discrepancy, right? If they're 4.8 stars on Google and they're 1.5 on TripAdvisor, I do think that that's something that would give someone pause and cause them to reconsider their initial choice.
Right. And as we discussed before the recording started, I mean, one of the primary strategies that users now have to combat fake reviews, they don't have the time or energy to really do a detailed analysis of all these reviews, is that they look on multiple sites that they trust to see, well, is this hotel basically consistently rated on TripAdvisor, on Google, maybe on, whatever, hotels.com, Expedia or something. And they do those kinds of quick checks in part to see, this kind of thing that you're talking about, David? Is there a major discrepancy?
Right. And it's, like I said at the beginning, it's a proxy for people. It's shorthand. It allows them to cut through. And a lot of them are using Google brand search to do that, which, again, I think is just interesting. That it's important also in the sense that people in SEO have always assumed that a brand search is strictly a recovery search.
A navigational.
Some navigational search, or recover the phone number, whatever, recover the address. But there is some percentage of them. And Google recognizes this in that rollout of the LSA feature where they're showing this. Now, the way Google rolled that feature out of showing LSAs on brand searches, not in the restaurant area, but in others, certainly was very self-serving and not business focused. Google claims they will be able to tell which customers previously interacted with the business, which I find hilarious. I mean, they're going to be overcharging people a lot on that, but it's
very business focused, Mike. It's very focused on Google's business. Absolutely.
There you have it. So it's just interestingly, it ties into that some of these searches on brands, even on LSA, are in fact new customers. Probably not as many as Google thinks, but
Now we know the true meaning of Google My Business, which is no longer in use.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.